Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mind Muscle Connection podcast. Today is a solo episode, and I have a topic I want to dive into, and that is circadian hygiene, circadian rhythm. I think this is an underrated and overlooked aspect of overall health and body comp change. And I think a lot of people ignore it, right? It's really just pushing training and nutrition. And again, that's a good starting point, absolutely. But this is definitely a very overlooked factor that I think impacts a lot of people, and just today's modern environment really makes this challenging to do. So we'll dive into that. But first, just want to go over a few ways you can help support the podcast. So first, if you found this podcast to be helpful in any way, if you could leave a rating and review, and that will help more people find this podcast. Obviously, if this is your first time listening, go ahead and listen a couple times, see if this is something you enjoy. But if you have listened multiple times, you keep coming back, you enjoy it, and you haven't yet, please make sure you go and do that. It'll be much appreciated. Again, I really appreciate everybody who takes time out of their day to listen to this podcast. Next, if you haven't yet, give me a follow on Instagram, Jeff, HOEHN _, and that's where I'm most active on social media. You can ask me any questions on there. If you have any questions about anything I talk about on here, or something that makes sense, or you need further clarification, that's a great place to reach out to me. So with that out of the way, let's dive into today's topic. And again, it's circadian hygiene, circadian rhythm. Again, I think this is super important. I think many people overlook it. And like I said, this is something that in today's modern environment, it just is something that if you're not, actively seeking this out, like it's something that a lot of people can prove. And it's just one of those like really baseline foundational things that is really going to make your body comp change much easier. I think if this is off, you're really going to find that body comp change it's going to feel like an uphill battle for you. So again, this is critical. And, not only from a body comp standpoint, let's take that to the side. Obviously people that listen to this, that is super important for them, but all things considered, just overall health, you're going to be at a lower risk of disease as well too, if we can get this in check. So, there's a lot of things that, again, if this is off, I think a lot of issues stem from your circadian hygiene, circadian rhythm being out of whack compared to, what it needs to be. Again, I always like to bring this up. I think the reason our circadian hygiene is circadian rhythm is so important is, just think, obviously now we have artificial light, we're inside. Things are just completely different now than it was, as we evolved. And so our bodies are evolved really kind of going off of the sunlight, right? Going on natural, like light and everything like that in terms of the day and night. Whereas like now it's, it could be 9 p.m. and it's like you could have a ton of light. We have blue lights all the time. Some people work overnight, right? When really our bodies are designed to, be awake during the day, and then at night it's like, hey, that's time that we rest. And again, that goes off of the day and night cycle there. Somebody, and I don't know where I heard this from, but somebody said, this is how important sleep is for humans. Back in the day, we're talking back in the day, thousands of years ago, we had that risk of, other animals or other people basically trying to, kill you for, food or whatever it may be. Right. And we still like had this period of time where we needed, 6 to 8 hours of sleep and sleep overnight. That's like how important sleep is. I thought that was super important, right? That it's like, that's a time that we're at a high risk of, a lion or whatever it may be, or some type of animal coming after us. But again, it was so important for us to get sleep that it was like, hey, we still have to do this. So again, I think that just kind of shows the importance of sleep and getting that sleep there. But I will say, sleep is just one aspect of your circadian rhythm and your circadian hygiene. It's a very important piece of it, but it is only one part of it. So again, one overlooked factor that may be hurting your health and causing you to not see the changes you want despite working hard in the gym is poor circadian hygiene. And this is something that many people struggle with in today's modern environment. So what is circadian rhythm? It's your body's internal 24-hour clock that regulates important processes like sleep, metabolism, hormone release, and even your mood. It helps your body know when it's time to be awake, alert, and active, and when it's time to rest and recover. This rhythm is influenced by external factors like light and dark, but also by your daily habits like when you eat, sleep, or exercise. So many bodily systems are going to operate on a circadian rhythm, okay? Again, which is the body's natural 24-hour internal clock. And so what are some of those? So your endocrine system, right? So your hormones. Your circadian rhythm is going to regulate hormone production and release. So, some of these ones that are going to be important are going to be cortisol, right? Often called the stress hormone. We know that some cortisol is good and we need some, but it's when, it's high all the time. And when it when it can become an issue. But it's also when your body releases cortisol as well too, right? So cortisol levels peak in the morning to help you wake up and decrease throughout the day. When we start to mess with our circadian rhythm, you'll start to see that where, it can get higher. You won't see those peaks in the morning. And that's when people are like super tired in the morning. It also peaks at like different times of the day, or it can also be problematic when it peaks at night, right? So again, if your circadian rhythm is in a good spot, you're going to see your cortisol levels rise and peak in the morning, right? And that's going to help you wake up there. We also have melatonin, and this is released at night to promote sleep, and they're kind of indirect of each other. So when cortisol is higher, melatonin is going to be lower. So again, if we have that higher cortisol during the day or at night, you're going to see that kind of mismatch there. And that's where you could kind of have that like kind of wired and tired kind of feeling. Growth hormone, again, it's released during sleep. It aids in muscle repair and recovery. Again, that's going to be impacted by that. Insulin, right? Insulin sensitivity follows a circadian pattern, being highest during the day and lower at night. So you can start to see where, something like your nutrition timing can play a role here with this, right? In terms of, for eating these large meals late at night, that could become problematic because insulin sensitivity is going to be higher during the day. And again, this makes sense, right? I mean, evolutionarily speaking, we basically slept, during the nighttime. So that's when, again, it was like, hey, we can give that, system a break during the nighttime. Your digestive system, right? Your body digests food more efficiently at certain times of the day, with insulin sensitivity and digestion generally better in the morning and afternoon. Gastric function, enzyme production, and gut motility fluctuate, with slower digestion typically happening at night. So you can start to see here where not only with insulin sensitivity, it's like, hey, your body's not going to utilize the food you give it as well at night, but also from a digestive standpoint, if you have these big meals at night, like your enzyme production is not going to be as great and your gut motility is not going to be as great, right? You're going to have that slower digestion happening at night. So, if you are experiencing some gut issues, part of this could be, hey, what time of day are we having this? Your cardiovascular system, blood pressure and heart rate, both tend to follow a circadian rhythm, being lower during sleep and higher during the day. Blood pressure dips at night, and disruptions in circadian rhythm can increase cardiovascular risks, such as heart attacks, which are more common in the morning. And then liver function too, right? The liver's role in detoxifying the body and metabolizing nutrients follows a circadian rhythm, with some liver functions being more active during the night, especially if you are fasting during sleep, right? So the liver as well too can also be something there that is impacted. So you can see where it really does impact a lot of different things here. And so that kind of prefaces that in terms of, okay, so these are the things that run on that 24-hour clock. And this will help set up the rest of this episode. So let's now talk about how poor circadian hygiene can impact you, and then we'll dive into some habits and things that we can start to get our circadian hygiene heading in the right direction. One thing I will say is, keep this in mind: the older you are, the more this is going to impact you. Okay, so or the less the less robust your circadian rhythm is. So this probably is partly why when you're like in your 20s, you can really do anything and everything, and it's like it really doesn't impact you. Yes, it is going. The worse it is, it's going to start to impact some people more. Probably genetics probably play a role in this as well too. But generally speaking, when we're in our 20s, our circadian rhythm is much more robust then. And then as you get older, this becomes more important. I think, again, anybody that is you're in your 30s, you're in your 40s, 50s, or older, like you can probably relate to this, right? Where it's like you get a poor night of sleep, or again, any of these things are off, and they just impact you a lot more than they did in the past. So again, keep that in mind. Your age is going to play a big role here in this. So again, how can this impact you? Again, we know some things that can happen. We know what runs on that 24-hour cycle, and some things that can show up. So how does this actually impact you? Like, how is this going to show up? Decreased ability to lose fat and build muscle. Again, your body's just going to be less. It's going to just be less. There's just going to be more friction in terms of changing your body, right? So again, from a losing fat standpoint, hunger is going to be higher when sleep is impacted. Again, we talked about from an insulin sensitivity standpoint, that's going to be impacted as well too, right? And then obviously if you get poor sleep, that's just going to impact your recovery overall, which isn't going to be great from a muscle building standpoint, right? So that's going to be the first thing here, is just decreased ability to lose fat and build muscle, decreased recovery. So again, if you're somebody that really likes to train a ton, you're, trying to get into a calorie deficit, and then you're also like circadian hygiene is out of whack, this is going to this is going to be really tough for you to recover from any type of training. Your body's just going to be in that constant state of just trying to recover, which again is going to come back to the first thing of your, decreased ability to lose fat and build muscle there. Brain fog, memory issues. Again, poor sleep is going to impact that. If you have poor sleep, poor circadian hygiene, that's going to show up as brain fog. You're not going to, be able to think as clearly and as sharply. I'm kind of experiencing this now with, having a new child. Memory issues. You're going to forget things a lot more. I can't tell you how many times over the last couple of weeks with my sleep being out of whack, how Allie's asked me many times, hey, did you do this? I'm like, holy crap, I totally forgot about that. Or I'm in the middle of doing something. I'm like, what the hell am I even doing? Right. Again, those are that it can, show up there from that perspective. A lack of energy, right? You're just not gonna feel great. You're gonna feel tired. And again, this could be, you may be getting 8 hours of sleep, but if some of these other things are out of whack in terms of your circadian hygiene habits, that could be impacting your energy. Menstrual cycle irregularities, right? From a female perspective, if you're experiencing that, this could be from poor circadian hygiene. Hormone imbalances. So, if you get your blood work done, or you just kind of think maybe your testosterone's low, or for women, the progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, those are not in, again, we want the right amount of each. And if those are out of whack, again, this could be from poor circadian hygiene. You're at an increased risk of getting sick too, right? So if you're somebody who gets sick a ton, this could be something to look into here. Gut health issues, right? We talked about how, the gut runs on that 24-hour cycle. And so again, this can lead to some gut health issues, constipation, bloating, etc. here as well. So a few other things I want to add in. So again, sleep deprivation, right? So again, poor circadian hygiene can impact that. And you could be somebody who is just not getting enough sleep. Like I said, sleep is a huge part of it, but it's not the only thing. But again, like, what are some things here? Like an inconsistent sleep schedule. So going to bed and waking up at different times each day is going to be a big one here, right? Again, that's going to lead to fatigue, irritability, difficulty concentrating, mood swings, reduced cognitive performance. And, the long-term effects of this are going to be increased risk of cardiovascular disease, impaired memory, and reduced immune function. You're going to see that a lot of these just kind of tie together as well too, right? Some people are going to suffer from insomnia or just poor sleep quality, right? This could be from, again, frequent waking up during the night or struggling to fall asleep. Again, that's going to disrupt the body's ability to maintain a regular sleep-wake cycle. So again, this is going to be things that I'm going to go over some things that we can work on here to get this in check, but these are things that you're going to notice. Some symptoms are going to be trouble staying asleep or waking up feeling unrefreshed, even after a full night in bed. So it's like, hey, I'm sleeping 8 hours a night. But again, if you're having these things, that can be something there. Again, what are going to be the long-term effects of this? Increased stress levels, anxiety, depression, heightened inflammation in the body as well too. A big one that you see here is like shift work, right? So a lot of people that work shift work. So working night shifts or irregular hours. Again, this is going to be common for, healthcare workers, nurses, stuff like that. It's going to force the body to be awake when it should be asleep. I've worked with multiple nurses who work overnight, and I'll tell you what, it's a challenge. It's definitely very challenging. There's very specific things that we need to do to work around this kind of shift work. But at the end of the day, shift work is just not going to be great for the body. Again, you're going to feel that constant tiredness, difficulty concentrating, digestive problems, right? Because again, if you think, we talked about how things aren't working as well overnight from a gut perspective, well, that's going to lead to those digestive problems. Again, when we have digestive problems, that's going to lead to a whole other host of issues, right? Mood issues, just when your gut doesn't feel good, you just don't feel good, right? You may not be absorbing as many nutrients as you should, right? So again, the long-term effects of that are going to be higher risk of obesity, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, and heart disease. Then we have social jet lag, right? So this is like irregular weekend schedule. You're staying up later on weekends and you're sleeping in. And again, that's going to cause that misalignment between the body's circadian rhythm and external cues. So, a lot of times I'll have clients be like, hey, this weekend I'm catching up on sleep. I'm sleeping in later. It's like, that's good. We definitely want to get that sleep, but we have to be careful with that, right? Again, what are the symptoms of these going to be? Difficulty waking up on weekdays, low energy during the day, and poor mental clarity. I also think it can increase your hunger on the weekends too. So obviously people's food choices change, and that's probably the big one, but it can also increase your hunger there. What are the long-term effects of this? Increased risk of depression, weight gain, and a disrupted metabolism due to irregular sleep patterns. Obesity and metabolic issues, eating late at night, irregular eating habits. So eating late at night or consuming large meals at odd hours can misalign your circadian rhythm with your body's natural digestion processes. Again, this is that, you heard that myth of like, oh, you shouldn't eat late at night it's going to cause all this fat gain. And then, then you had the calories in, calories out kind of crowd where it's like, well, your calories for the day are the most important, which is true. But within that, if you're really screwing this up in terms of when you're eating and you're having, a ton of a lot of food late at night, it's, highly processed type foods, low protein, this is going to impact your gut health. And like we said, insulin sensitivity is not as great later on. Again, that's from your circadian rhythm, right? So again, these are the meal timing thing is like, hey, you could have a little bit, maybe it's like higher protein, but we don't want to have these like large meals like before bed or late at night or overnight, because again, your body's just not in the most optimal state. Again, if you do this once, it's not a big deal, but if you do it all the time and you're having, highly processed foods and then combination with everything else that we're talking about, that's where it's going to start to add up. So again, the symptoms are going to be, you're going to have this kind of like weight gain that you don't, really, it's like, why is this happening? You're going to have a slower metabolism and again, insulin resistance as well too, right there. So it's like, again, eating times are super important. Again, your overall caloric intake for the day is most important, but I think right under that, like eating it like late at night or overnight is going to be, right up there with it. Mood disorders, right? Circadian misalignment can lead to an imbalance in neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which regulate mood. So again, obviously the symptoms of this are going to be feelings of sadness, irritability, mood swings, or heightened anxiety that worsen with poor sleep. And again, obviously the long-term effects of that are going to be depression, anxiety disorders, and just a lower overall quality of life there. So again, we want to make sure that this is in check. A weakened immune system, right? So sleep deprivation weakens your immune system's ability to fight infections, making you more prone to colds, flu, and other illnesses. Again, this is obviously going to show up as like frequent illnesses, prolonged recovery times, and higher susceptibility to infections. Again, I see clients all the time that they get sick regularly, and time again, it usually are my clients that they're very inconsistent with sleep. They're very, again, they're up late and whatnot here. So again, it kind of makes sense there. It's also big in my people that like to go out on the weekends and like stay out late and like drink a ton on the weekends as well too. Like that's probably going to be something that really wrecks your circadian rhythm there. Again, I don't want to be like, oh, don't do anything fun or anything like that. It's obviously, this is all on a spectrum, right? So again, the older you are, the more this is going to impact you. The more often you do it, the more it's going to impact you. And then like the worse things are, the more it's going to impact you, right? If you stay up till 1 a.m. every once in a while and you have 1 or 2 drinks every once in a while and you're in your 30s, it's probably not going to do much to you. But if you're, in your 40s and you're having 5, 6, 7 or more drinks, you're staying up till 4 a.m., you're eating overnight, that's where these things are going to start to add up more, right? Digestive problems. So we already talked about that, but your digestive system follows a circadian rhythm as well, and eating at inconsistent times or staying up late can throw it off. Again, symptoms of this are going to be like bloating, indigestion, acid reflux, and changes in bowel habits. Long-term effects are going to be increased risk of GI issues, including IBS and leaky gut, which would be like gut permeability, right? Leaky gut's kind of like a what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know, but it's kind of like a term that people will just kind of throw around there with that. Cognitive impairment, right? So disrupted sleep leads to poor memory consolidation and reduced cognitive function. Again, this is going to be like brain fog, memory lapses, poor decision making, and slower reaction times. Again, hormonal imbalances, right? So circadian misalignment can lead to fluctuations in hormone levels, especially cortisol, melatonin, and thyroid hormones. Again, this is like the symptoms are going to be chronic stress, irregular periods in women, fatigue, and difficulty waking up or falling asleep there. And then obviously, shifted circadian rhythm can also elevate blood pressure and increase risk of heart disease as well too. So you can see where this really impacts a lot of things here. And again, I think this is a big issue for a lot of people in today's modern environment, right? So what I want to wrap up here with is my top 3 circadian rhythm habits, and then some other ones that are going to be super helpful there. All right, so top 3. Number 1 is going to be stick to a regular sleep schedule, even on weekends. There's even research to back this up that sleep regularity might be a little bit more important than sleep quantity, believe it or not. Again, I think if you're sleeping 2 hours a night, okay, that's probably not great. We do want to get that kind of baseline there. But, if you're sleeping 6 hours a night, I think it's more important for you to try to sleep and wake at the same time versus like, hey, I need to get to 8 hours of sleep per night, right? So again, that's going to show up as a person who, during the week, maybe you go to bed at 12, you wake up at 6, and then you're like, man, I'm super tired. Now I'm going to sleep until like 10 on the weekends. Again, you're probably better off waking up closer to that 6 a.m., 6 to 8 a.m. time frames. So again, I would give yourself an hour to buffer, 2 hours at the most, and then also it's how often you do it. If you have an event and it's like one time you do it, okay, it's no big deal. But if you're doing this every single weekend all the time, that's where it's going to start to add up. So again, we want to stick to that regular sleep schedule. Get exposure to natural light early in the day. So if that's like some sort of light that you have at home, I need to look up what exactly those lights can be. Give me a second on that. But ideally, we would get outside and get some sunlight. Yeah, so some sort of like light box or something along those lines, right? Like light therapy box can be something there, especially like in the winter, right? When it's like really hard to get outside. So again, those are going to be your best things to do. Try to get out as early as you can during the day. That's going to be super helpful to help set your circadian rhythm. And again, avoid heavy meals and bright screens close to bedtime. So again, I don't think you necessarily need to be like, hey, I can't eat after 6 p.m. I don't think you necessarily need to do that. But if you're going to sleep at 10, you probably don't want to have a heavy meal at 9 p.m., right? If you are going to have a meal, you probably want it to be a little bit lighter from that perspective. And then the big thing is bright screens close to bedtime. I can't tell you how many times I ask clients, hey, they're getting poor sleep. And it's like, so what do you do before bed? It's like, well, I sit on my phone for a while. It's like, that's literally one of the worst things you could do, from a circadian rhythm sleep perspective. So, if we can, we really want to try to avoid those bright screens close to bedtime. So, if you like to watch TV, close to bed, definitely don't do it in your bed, do it outside. And then if you can, get some blue light blocking glasses or, really try to, some TVs, I don't think necessarily do this, but I know like computers and your phones, you can get that kind of like, it ends up being like an orange screen. They call it, I think, a nighttime light. I don't know the exact name of it, but you basically, you're not getting that blue light. So again, if we can do those things, that can be super helpful there. So those are my top three. So if you're like so confused on what to do here, those would be the first three things I would work on. Some other ones that we can work on are just overall sunlight throughout the day. So obviously getting sunlight early in the day is helpful, but the more sunlight we can get throughout the day, the more it's going to be helpful there. Exercise is obviously going to be helpful here. Making sure you are exercising, that's going to, really help regulate your circadian rhythm. Obviously, the only kind of caveat to that would be, hey, we probably don't want to have super intense workout right before bed. Limiting overly stressful events too late in the day when you can. Obviously, I understand that sometimes that's not always within our control, but when we can, we really want to try to limit those stressful events too late in the day. So that's like, having like super serious conversations. That's like getting on social media and getting worked up. It's working late. Like those are things we want to avoid. I'm avoiding stimulants and alcohol too late in the day. So stimulants, being, mostly caffeine that most people are going to take. Some people will take like ADH or ADD medication or whatever that may be. Again, we probably want to avoid taking those things too late in the day, but caffeine for sure is going to be a big one. And then alcohol as well too. Alcohol is definitely going to impact your sleep and therefore impact your circadian rhythm. So we want to be careful with having that too late in the day as well too. And then watching your overall caffeine intake. So not only do we want to avoid caffeine late in the day, but also just overall caffeine intake throughout the day as well too, as that can impact you. And then supplements, right? Things like vitamin D, magnesium, fish oil, then using melatonin when you need to can all be things to kind of help set this up there. So those are the big things. Again, I feel like this is something that today's modern environment, yes, it's so many different things. It's a combination of, hey, it's so easy to be sedentary. There's just highly palatable, tasty foods all around. And then you also throw this in too, where, most people just, if they don't focus on these things or you're just not aware of them, you just kind of naturally just kind of mold into what the environment is like. And that's where I think where we run into troubles, right? It's these three things there. And this is what has led to people just being so unhealthy. Again, if you listen to this podcast, you're probably not there, but this is something that obviously people that aren't into health, like, this is really going to impact them. But even if you are into health and fitness and like maybe you've been working super hard, I think that if this is off, this is something that is going to really speed up your results and just make everything you do way more efficient. I know for me personally, like by focusing on these things, it's really helped me kind of ramp up my physique over time, my health, and it's just made everything just way more frictionless essentially there. So just understand too, though, you're not going to get every one of these perfect right away or ever, but the goal is to prioritize it as it's something that can impact your body's ability to change even if you are like working hard in the gym and or following your macros to a T, right? So this is something that, again, it's like, hey, I'm working super hard in the gym. I'm tracking what's going on. Why am I not seeing change? This is probably a big thing there. So a lot of information in this one. So if you guys have any questions on it, let me know. I hope this was helpful. And again, if you have like any questions on this, or you feel like this is something that you need help on, again, my free 30-minute strategy call is for this. This is definitely something that, is at the baseline of what I work on with clients, right? When I talk about, taking a health first approach, this is certainly, one of the most important things there. So that's it for this episode. If you guys have any questions, let me know. I'll talk to you soon.